3, go ahead.
Pressure 3, airborne and flag.
But here is where the war would actually have to be won. Air power can accomplish a great deal, but only ground troops can occupy territory. Some ground action actually began quite early in the conflict. This is Kafchi, a small town just inside the Saudi border near Kuwait. When the Iraqi army sends a lightning thrust across the border to occupy the deserted city, the Allies respond instantly. Saudi troops mount a counterattack. Shortly after the onslaught, the town is retaken. The battle is then called an irrelevant sideshow. But the furious reaction of Allied forces gives an inkling of the devastation a full-scale ground war would later bring. Ironically, the mixing of airplanes and ground troops can also bring tragic results to friendly forces as well. These are Maverick missiles, a deadly foe of armored vehicles. Unfortunately, a number of Marines are killed when an A-10 mistakenly fires a Maverick that hits a U.S. personnel carrier. It is not the first time that so-called friendly fire has taken lives in wartime. But it is also a sobering reminder of what can happen, even with today's smart weapons. But for many ground troops, there is no air support closer than this. Helicopter gunships join Desert Storm in vast numbers. The Marines send in Sea Cobras, tank killers that join in the battle for Kafchi with telling results.
It was stiff resistance, again, because they were not turning tail and running. They were shooting back and again, using the proper tactics that attack helicopters use, were able to destroy them and survive.
The Army still has its venerable AH-1 Cobra attack helicopters. Granted, the basic airframe has been around since Vietnam, but it has been so upgraded over the years that a pilot from that era would be hard-pressed to recognize the Cobra. And the new kid on the gunship block takes things to another level altogether. This is the AH-64 Apache. More than 200 of the rakish-looking aircraft join the battle, ranging far and wide with one thing in mind. It is armed with Hellfire missiles, tow missiles, 70mm rockets, and a 30mm chain gun. And like its fixed-wing brothers, Apaches have the ability to launch weapons that home in on reflected laser energy. This enables the crew to keep moving, firing a weapon while the target is being designated by another helicopter or even ground troops. Watching this, it's hard to believe the Apache was once maligned as being unreliable. That proved not to be the case during Desert Storm, a fact that would be made clear soon. Army commanders, while appreciative of the air campaign, knew that a second phase was always part of the plan.
I think the Air Force plays a very vital role in what it does. We play a very vital role in the ground component. We can't do it alone, and they can't do it alone. We are a combined arms team all the way, and this is how we prefer to think of ourselves, and in fact, that's the reality of the situation.
And this man turned out to be the mastermind behind the concept of a combined arms campaign in the desert. From the start, he was out there among the troops, almost indistinguishable at times. The Allied commander, General Norman Schwarzkopf, held the answer to many of the questions of the previous months. And the final events he set in motion would be so swift that both the victor and the vanquished would be shocked. On Sunday, February 24th, the long-awaited ground campaign got underway. Because air power had completely taken out the Iraqis' ability to perform reconnaissance, Allied units moved far out along the border with Iraq and attacked in from there. The French 6th Division had the tough job of racing across Iraq to provide protection for the Allied flank. The combination of armor and gunships proved decisive. Meanwhile, the 1st Marine Division, 2nd Marine Division, U.S. Army, Saudi, and Kuwait units attacked into Kuwait itself. The smoke from burning oil wells gave the sky a dull gray overcast. It served as an eerie backdrop for M60 tanks and Cobra gunships, leading the way in an assault of devastating impact. The U.S. 82nd Airborne and 101st Airborne Division conducted a massive assault deep into Iraq to cut off the retreat of the Iraqis' elite Republican Guard. At one point, 300 helicopters, from Chinooks to Blackhawks, Cobras, and Apaches, are all racing across the desert in the largest single helicopter assault in history. And on the ground, Egyptians and Syrians then move into Kuwait as well. At sea, the U.S. Navy pounds the Iraqis from offshore with the battleships Missouri and Wisconsin. At the same time, Harrier jump jets carry out close air support missions from assault ships. And landing craft loaded with gear move close to land. But an amphibious landing never does come. All the activity proves to be part of an elaborate hoax designed to hold the Iraqis in place while they are being cut off. Finally, the U.S. 1st Infantry, 1st British Armored Division, 1st U.S. Armored, 2nd and 3rd U.S. Armored, and 24th Mechanized Infantry strike deep into Iraq. Dashing to the Tigris River, they encircle and destroy the remainder of an already beaten Iraqi army. In what amounts to be a race across hundreds of miles of desert, it takes only 4 days to defeat 21 divisions, and most Iraqi troops just give up. At last, Allied forces reached Kuwait City, ending an occupation which began nearly 7 months before. Once the outcome became clear, the true impact of the campaign came to light. It was a rout. Everywhere there were long lines of Iraqi prisoners of war. The scenes of these ill-equipped and starving troops begging for mercy and food tugged at the heartstrings of even the toughest Allied soldiers.
Don't let the man walk around with no socks on. He'll pay for it, though. Hussein will pay for it. I bet you that he'll pay for it. So everybody be treated the same, though. But he wouldn't treat us that way, though. But we're going to look out for him.
The Iraqis lost nearly 4,000 tanks, 1,900 armored personnel carriers, and 2,000 artillery pieces. Nearly 60,000 Iraqis were captured, thousands more deserted, and an estimated 150,000 were killed in action. Most of the damage was done from the air, and everywhere burning and rusting hulks bore silent witness to the fury and the tragedy. The final chapter took only 100 hours to complete.
Air power played a very, very important role. I think it had a lot to do with their morale being extremely low. Air power had made logistics and resupply very difficult for them, so they were hungry and thirsty, as you saw as you moved along with one of our task forces. On the other hand, there was still a hell of a lot of them here, alive and well.
With the end a mere formality, a final tally begins to be taken. There were Allied casualties too, wounded as well as killed. In all, 45 Allied planes failed to come back, 36 of those in action against Iraq. The rest are accidental. A total of 149 people are killed in all forms of combat, and pilots make up only a small percentage of those losses. Finally, on Wednesday, February 27th, the Allies declare a ceasefire, and the vast procession of warplanes begins to roll across the runways for the last time, some already heading home. $100,000 sorties are what it took to bring about a military victory of staggering scope. And while historians will long debate the politics, ramifications, and unforeseen outcomes of the war, one fact was quite clear. One would be hard-pressed to find a case where air power proved to be more decisive than here, under the blazing skies of the Gulf, during Operation Desert Storm.
I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and hit that notification icon for the latest videos as they are released. Thanks for watching, and catch you in the next one. Ciao for now.